Our story begins high on the edge of a rugged coastal cliff, where a solo angler is rigging his ropes for a descent most people would never even consider. Strapped to his back is a pack loaded with fishing tackle and camping gear, everything he needs to survive a night off the grid. His plan is bold but simple. Abseil all the way down the sheer rock face to a spectacular sea cave hidden at the bottom, right where the ocean meets the stone. The rule he sets himself is just as simple. Whatever he catches becomes dinner, and tonight he is camping out. After lowering himself down the towering cliff face, he finally drops into the cave itself, a raw, cathedral-like space carved out by the ocean over countless years. The first thing he notices is just how wet it is inside. Moisture clings to every surface, dripping from the ceiling and pooling across the rock. It is not the most comfortable start, but it is undeniably dramatic. He moves around setting up a handful of cameras to capture the mission from every angle, and reveals he is not completely alone. A companion has come along too, mostly staying behind the lens, perhaps joining later once there is food to share. With the cameras rolling, it is time to bring the fish to him. He sets his burley, a solid block of oily, pungent baitfish that he lowers into the water below. It is the kind of powerful smell that every fish in the area seems unable to resist. A scent trail designed to pull them in from far and wide. With firewood already gathered and stacked for the fire he will need later, he turns to his rods. He rigs up two very different outfits. A heavy, powerful setup built to handle something serious, and a lighter, more delicate rig for the smaller fish that will become his bait. It does not take long for the action to begin. On one of his very first casts, the rod loads up and he swings in his first fish of the trip, a small snook. It is nowhere near the dinner he is dreaming of, but out here in the cave nothing goes to waste. So instead of releasing it, he makes the smart call and turns the little snook straight into bait, the first small building block of a much bigger plan now quietly taking shape on the rocks below him. Then the lighter setup suddenly comes alive with something far stronger and far angrier. Whatever has grabbed the lure powers straight down toward the bottom and bolts under a rocky ledge, wedging itself somewhere he simply cannot reach. He tries everything, feeding it slack line in the hope it will swim back out into open water, but the fish is stubborn and clever, and it refuses to budge. Eventually the pressure tells and the line gives way. He has been well and truly smoked. Undeterred, he switches straight across to the heavy gear, bracing himself for a proper battle. Adjusting his tactics, he sits down and ties up a dedicated bait rig, a sturdy circle hook running through a swivel to a heavy lead, finished with quick change clips that let him swap between lure and bait in seconds. Then he takes a couple of his herring and fillets them down into fresh, bloody strips of bait. Loaded up and ready, he sends it down to work the bottom of the cave, targeting the bigger, better fish that seem to be holding somewhere in the deeper, darker water below him. The new approach pays off almost straight away. The rod buckles, and after a short tussle he swings up a beautiful break sea cod, a fish widely regarded as one of the very best eating species anywhere along this stretch of coastline. It is a genuine keeper and exactly what he came for. He takes care of it properly, bleeding it cleanly before setting it carefully to one side. And just like that, the solid foundation of tonight's dinner is officially secured on the rocks. And he is far from finished. Only moments later the rod slams over once again, and this fish feels noticeably heavier and better. After another spirited fight he lifts a second, even larger break sea cod up and off the rocks. With two genuinely quality fish now safely in the bag, he says it right out loud with a grin. Dinner is officially sorted. From this point on, anything else he manages to catch is pure, unexpected bonus. That bonus arrives with a violent, arm-wrenching jolt. Something enormous engulfs his bait and the heavy rod folds straight over under an incredible, unmoving weight. He immediately suspects a shark, or perhaps a massive black stingray, sitting there like a stubborn anchor in the depths beneath him. For a long, sweat-soaked battle he leans right back into the fish with everything he has, amazed his straining line has not already exploded. But in the end the giant wins its freedom, popping the line somewhere far below. All he is left holding is his leader, recovered intact, and one heck of a story. With the adrenaline of that unseen monster fading, he turns his focus back to the practical realities of camping out overnight in a remote sea cave. He heads off to gather a decent bag of firewood, knowing he will be grateful for a warm fire once the sun drops and the temperature falls. Returning to his fishing spot, he re-rigs the light setup that was so brutally destroyed earlier in the day. He is determined to catch a few more baits, and quietly curious about what else might still be cruising through his cave. Now it is time for some serious bait collection. Working the lighter gear, he begins pulling and herring one after another, the little tummy rough bait fish that dominate these cool southern waters. They are not bad eating in their own right, but with 2 prime break sea cod already locked away for dinner. These fish have a very different destiny. Alive, silver, and frantically wriggling on the hook, they make the perfect tempting offering for something much larger lurking somewhere in the depths below him. He sends one of those lively little herring back out into the dark water, and almost instantly the ocean responds. His line falls suddenly slack, then loads straight up hard and heavy. His live bait has just been eaten by something big. A powerful fish is now firmly on the line, and he is fairly certain he knows exactly what it is. A Samson fish, a notoriously brutal, bulldozing brawler. Hold on tight, because the fight is now well and truly on. Knowing precisely what he is up against, he immediately backs his drag right off, so a sudden run cannot tear the expensive rod straight out of his hands. Then he settles patiently into the battle, working the fish and winding in every scrap of slack line whenever the chance appears. Slowly but surely he begins to gain the upper hand, and eventually he lands it. A solid Samson fish somewhere around 10 kilos, though he is quick to point out that this is actually considered small for the species. He bleeds it cleanly and adds it to the growing feast. With the fishing finally beginning to wind down for the evening, his attention shifts across to the kitchen, cave style, of course. He coaxes the fire to life, warm orange flames flickering against the cold, dark rock walls around him. Then he lays out the whole day's hard-won catch and gets to work with his knife, filleting first the powerful Samson fish and then the prized break sea cod. Clean, confident cuts quickly transform his fresh fish into neat, pan-ready fillets. Ede is thinking ahead as he works too. The single biggest break sea cod is bagged up whole and set aside to take back home, a well-earned trophy for another day. The rest he carefully skins down, working through both the Samson fish and the smaller break sea cod, patiently removing the fine pin bones along the ribcage. Once they are clean, he tumbles the thick chunks of fresh fish through a generous bed of crunchy panko breadcrumbs, coating every piece ready for a golden, crispy fry over the open flame. The crumbed fish hits the sizzling pan and almost immediately the entire cave fills with a rich, mouth-watering smell of dinner cooking away. He builds a proper plate around it, turning a simple camp fry up into a genuine meal, a handful of green salad, some sliced tomato, a good pinch of salt and pepper, and even a bit of creamy avocado. Unable to wait a second longer, he plucks a piece of the sizzling Samson fish straight from the pan and tastes it. Fresh fish, caught by his own hands and cooked over fire, and it is every bit as good as he hoped. This right here is the real payoff, the whole reason for the mission. A genuinely delicious, well-earned meal at the end of a long and demanding day. He takes his time and truly savors every bite, happily declaring the entire trip a resounding success. Quality fish, caught with his own hands and cooked over a fire in a sea cave. And he certainly does not forget the man behind the camera. He throws a generous second batch onto the flames, because Salty, who filmed this whole adventure, has more than earned his dinner too. With both of them now full and content, it is finally time to settle in for the night. He strings his hammock up across the wide mouth of the cave and clips a cozy underquilt to its underside, effectively his mattress and his insulation against the cold, damp rock below. A mozzie net goes over the top for a small but welcome touch of luxury. It is a wonderfully simple bed, suspended above the softly lapping water, boasting what has to be one of the most epic, jaw-dropping views any camper could ever ask for. Morning eventually breaks over the cave, and it is an absolutely beautiful one, with one very welcome bonus. There are no mosquitoes at all. He explains that these caves can be genuinely brutal on that front. Some nights are spent lying paranoid and half-mauled, stuffing spare clothing around all the gaps in the hammock. But not this time. This time he slept soundly, safely and undisturbed. With both him and Salty due somewhere later that afternoon, he decides to squeeze in just a couple of quick casts before packing everything up and heading out. But the incredible cave has saved one last surprise for him. On what was supposed to be a lazy, casual morning cast, something powerful absolutely smashes the light line and very nearly smokes him all over again. He has no idea whatsoever what he has actually hooked into, only that it is putting up a seriously determined fight somewhere down below. And he already knows, with a sinking feeling, that trying to land a strong fish like this off these jagged, unforgiving rocks, on such delicate gear, is going to be anything but easy. With a bit of careful teamwork and an awful lot of patience, he slowly works the mystery fish up through the water toward the rocks, and when it finally breaks the surface, it is an absolute stunner. It is a pink snapper, the very first one he has managed to land in this cave, coaxed all the way in on nothing more than light 20-pound line. He is genuinely, visibly stoked. It is a fish he never expected to see this morning, and it gave him a proper runaround before finally giving up. What a perfect, unexpected note to end the whole trip on. After one or two final casts, he decides to call it there. There is a seriously impressive haul of fish to carry home now, so he sets about the last jobs of the trip, packing up his gear and filleting the remainder of his catch. With the daunting vertical climb back up the cliff now looming ahead of him, he clips his precious rods carefully onto his harness, making absolutely certain that nothing gets snapped or lost on the difficult way up. Everything secured, everything under control. And then comes the final challenge, the long climb back out. Hauling himself and all of his gear up the sheer rock face, he emerges at last at the very top of the cliff, ropes stowed and his pack loaded. Mission well and truly accomplished. He stands for a quiet moment and looks back down over the incredible sea cave that gave him so much in just 24 hours. Quality fish landed by hand, a fresh meal cooked over an open fire, a peaceful night slept above the water, and endless views. He warmly thanks Salty for filming, thanks us for watching, and signs off with a satisfied grin, leaving only the long hike back to the car between him and home.